Good evening and welcome to World Talks, coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Saria Strzemska. Serbia could soon be entering a new political phase. President Aleksandar Vučić has announced that early general elections will be held within the next 3 to 4 months and says he plans to resign as president before the vote. Many observers, however, believe the move could simply be a political maneuver that would allow him to return as prime minister. So what does this mean for Serbia's political future? To discuss, I have Ivan Vejvoda, senior researcher, Austrian Institute for International Affairs, joining me right now. Good evening, sir. Delighted to have you with us.
Good evening.
So there is speculation that even if he resigns as president, Aleksandar Vučić could return as prime minister, allowing him to retain substantial political influence. So how realistic is this scenario?
Indeed, that seems to be the most realistic scenario that we are looking at. He has been president for 2 terms of 5 years, and so he cannot run for a 3rd term constitutionally. Also, our constitutions, like many similar constitutions in Europe, the presidential position is weaker than the prime ministerial position, but in fact, President Vučić has usurped power and concentrated all power in the president's hands, single-handedly ruling over the country. So if he were to choose to go to the prime ministerial position, he would then be again completely in full control, but now constitutionally in the prime ministerial position. The announcement that he made the other day is one that he has made several times already during the past year, announcing possible elections, the last time that they would be maybe before the summer holidays. Of course, he reneged on that several times. So he's basically throwing a contentious bone to public opinion to chew on, so that they would be occupied with the way the political dynamic is concealed. Technically, his mandate as president runs until the beginning of May next year, while the government's legal mandate runs until the end of next calendar year, 2027. So if he were to take the prime ministerial position, he could remain in power for more than a year and a half.
But it seems that President Vučić has already begun rolling out new measures aimed at boosting public support. Most recently, he announced a package worth more than 600 million euro to improve living standards, with the government saying it could benefit more than 3 million people. Now, after more than a decade in power, are these kinds of economic incentives or even the rhetoric still likely to resonate with voters? And more broadly, what does Vučić's support base look like today?
Well, indeed, these handouts mainly addressed to pensioners who are living in difficult conditions with very low pensions. Any handout of this sort is welcome, and that constitutes the core of his voter base. Now, the other element that is crucial for the political situation in Serbia, as you may know, have been the protests that were sparked by the terrible tragedy more than a year and a half ago, the collapse of a canopy of the main train station in Novi Sad that killed 16 people. And people thought that this was an egregious example of corruption linked to government investments. The student protests that began a year and a half ago have been ongoing, and we're seeing pictures of that right now the other day. And these student protests have been joined by a very strong civic movement desiring change and basically a return to the rule of law that has been trampled on because the separation of powers and checks and balances do not exist anymore. All power is in the hands of one person, the parliament, or rather the judiciary, The legislative body and, of course, executive are all in one center of power. And so the reason that the president has been announcing many times elections is that his voter base has shrunk, and that there is a likelihood that the student/civic protest is garnering a majority in the opinion polls. President Vučić over the years has held snap elections, and you mentioned that he's been in power in various guises for more than 13 years. 3 times there have been snap elections because he knew that he had the numbers. The reason he hasn't declared snap elections is that I'm sure he sees in the opinion polls, which he checks every day, is that he does not have a majority anymore. And thus the hesitation on his part to call for elections, but rather than a decision to change position of power, as you mentioned at the beginning, and move from the presidential to the prime ministerial position, leaving the position of president open for a context that in all likelihood could be won by an oppositional figure.
Now, one of the most serious allegations made by government critics is the relationship between the ruling elites and organized crime. How strong are these ties?
The allegations are extremely serious. There have been many incidents over these past years involving drugs, secret drug marijuana factories, and most lately an incident where the third person in hierarchy of the Ministry of Interior, the chief of Belgrade Police, the capital city, was in a restaurant mediating between 2 criminal bosses, during which one of these criminals killed the other one in the presence of the Belgrade police chief. These people were, the chief of police was arrested. The investigation is ongoing, and this is seen as a sort of the tip of the iceberg where a collusion happened. When this event happened, the president, who is practically on television every single day explaining every event that goes on in the country, he actually literally said that as of that day, the police would not be defending criminals anymore, to the utter surprise of all public opinion that such a statement was possible, because, of course, the law says that the police should be hunting criminals. And in this statement, it was apparent that the police was allegedly protecting criminals. So these links are there. The judiciary, as I said, is under control of the executive, although there have been instances where brave prosecutors have put forward some cases, but we are basically in a situation of a captured state.
Ivan, you've mentioned that Vučić is keeping a close eye on the polls. So how great is the risk that these potential upcoming elections will not be free and fair?
Well, they certainly won't be free and fair because there's the other important element is the control of the media. There are 4 state-run national frequencies for television. They are all under the control of the executive, of the president. We do have 2 independent news channels. They are on cable TV and are visible to about a third of the population. But the kind of propaganda and disinformation that is fueled through the 4 national frequency television is such that you cannot talk about a free and fair election. Given the history of this unfairness, the students' movement, which is, as I said, very broad-based and linked with the civic movement, they have been preparing monitors for elections over this past year and a half. Of course, they've also been working on a variety of policy papers that are waiting for the elections to be proclaimed, because everyone agrees that the political crisis in which we are in has to be resolved peacefully through electoral means. And in a situation the whole society is hostage to the electoral calendar, as we said from the beginning, is defined by the person who is leading the country. He will decide when elections will be held, but I think he will abide by the constitutional rules, and that if there's a prolongation because of a hesitation about possible results, he may go to the end of the mandate of the president, and that would mean that he would be president until March. Another thing to mention is that Serbia hosts the Expo 2027, a world exposition, as you know, which opens on May 15th next year. And by all counts, it is sure that the president wants to be the one who hosts the many world leaders who will be coming to open their pavilions during the Expo next May, whether in a prime ministerial or in a presidential position.
Even before we go, and I'll need a short answer, despite months of protests and this widespread dissatisfaction, the opposition has struggled to unite behind a single leader or a coherent political alternative. Why so?
Well, because of the political history that we have since the fall of Milosevic and the terrible 1990s, when there was devastation and war. And that is why we saw the appearance of the student movement as a reaction to the weakness of the opposition and its difficulty in garnering a united front. The fact that this has been lasting for so long, I mentioned 1.5 years since the beginning of the protests, means that everyone has become a little more sober. And I think what one can expect once the date of the elections will be announced, I think there will be a unifying of the opposition, because everyone predicts a referendum-like situation when the elections come along.
Ivan Vejvoda, thank you so very much for joining us this evening. Much appreciated.
Thank you for the invitation.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.